Cyber Nation Uncensored.
Show of Tales from the Forlorn Dopes has just commenced. Hello, everyone. I am your wonderful host, Cybersmily.
I am your other co-host. I don't know how wonderful I am. Greetings, programs. We are back today, and again, we are joined by Craig Sheely. We're gonna rant and rave for a couple of hours and go off on tangents and talk about some rules.
Specifically about vehicles.
And we're very glad that he has joined us, and we're very glad that you are here listening.
So, thanks for coming back, Craig.
Right. If I may make a distinction here, I am not here to be interviewed. I'm here to tap your brains.
Yes.
I mean, that works for us.
We are going to ramble on about things. Before we get started, we usually do, normally with interviews, we get right into it, but for our other episodes, we try to give some status of like certain things that are happening within the cyberpunk genre, specifically any movies. Yeah, so we usually mention movies or TV series that we've come upon and kind of signal boost them. So, and then also like anything related to the Cyberpunk 2077 game, the Red, or what have you. So I was uncovered a couple of things. So apparently they've announced Tron Ares, which is going to be coming out next year.
And Jeff Bridges is coming back for it.
Yeah, it's October 10th. So Gillian Anderson's going to be in it. There's a good amount of people.
May I fervently wish that it's better than Tron Legacy.
Well, we'll see. Can't guarantee anything.
I mean, I'll be honest. I very much enjoyed Tron Legacy. I'm just happy anytime I see new Tron. I always thought it was one of the great underappreciated properties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we got about another year and a half for that. Another movie or series that's coming out, The Electric State. It's about an orphan teenager traversing the American West with a sweet but mysterious robot and an eccentric drifter in search of her younger brother.
Sounds pretty awesome.
It has Chris Pratt, Millie Brown. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with her work. And also...
She's the girl from Stranger Things.
Oh, okay. K.U.
So we have
Kwong.
So we have Dorothy the Scarecrow and the Tin Man.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's supposed to come out later this year. We have Furiosa that's coming out in about 3 weeks. Looking forward to that.
I've seen a couple of things on it. How much CGI is in that, guys?
Probably tons.
Knowing George Miller, probably not as much as you would expect.
True.
I mean, Fury Road, like all the actual like stunts and stuff were practical. CG was used, but it was used for stuff like the sandstorm or to add atmosphere.
Yeah.
The waterfall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the actual movie was pretty much practical in terms of necessary effects.
Yeah. Another movie that's coming out. I don't know how much cyberpunk it is. I mean, it's kind of far future, but not necessarily have any aliens. So kind of like, I think it's going to straddle the or is a cyberpunk adjacent movie, which is called Atlas, starring Jennifer Lopez.
I'm leery of that one.
Yeah. I mean, what was the one where she was a dream interpreter with the serial killer?
Cell?
Yeah, that was kind of
That movie was fantastic.
and it's very cyberpunky.
Yeah. I don't know. I always get leery at anything that even might allude to promoting Ayn Rand. Because, yeah.
Okay, enlighten me, please. What's the connection?
It's called Atlas, and it's set in the future. So
But
my mind automatically goes to Atlas Shrugged.
I don't think it's Ayn Rand though.
I don't think so either. But I'm leery. I'm watching.
Gun shy.
Yeah.
I am gun.
There's another thing called Latency, which is about a professional gamer who suffers from acute agoraphobia and receives new equipment that enhances her game, and she begins to wonder if it's reading her mind or controlling it. It's supposed to be an action horror movie.
Interesting.
So, might have some elements of cyberpunk in that.
It might.
And, yeah, that's about it from what I know of that is definitely coming out. Granted, there's all the hype. The ones that are suggested that they might be actually being worked on that we're not sure, like Neuromancer or...
Yeah, Blade Runner. The Blade Runner series is still supposed on its way.
Judge Dredd.
Neuromancer, Judge Dredd, like all these things that just seem to be perpetually in production, but we never see anything coming.
Yeah.
However, what has made it to production and what has made it to our screens, it's been a couple of weeks since it's been out, so we're free to talk. I feel like we're good to talk about it. Not going to throw out any spoilers, but if you haven't seen Fallout, you need to watch Fallout.
Yeah.
It's absolutely everything you want a Fallout series to be.
I have heard that from all corners.
Yeah.
Because I must watch it.
The one and only place that it fails to not truly replicate the Fallout experience is that you don't see the main characters spend every waking moment picking up every fucking tin can and piece of trash on the ground and the thoughts that it might be useful.
You know, Fallout
other than that.
Fallout is really green, isn't it? Reuse. Don't waste.
I mean, it's a recycling heaven. Nothing goes to waste. But yeah, it is. It is as accurate to Fallout as edgerunners was to Cyberpunk 2077. Like
the Fallout series is actually more accurate to Fallout than edgerunners. No superpowers.
No superpowers. Yeah, that's a plus. The weapons, like 90% of the weapons you see are straight from the game. The vault looks exactly like a vault. Yes. Like down to the point where like I placed that exact piece yesterday.
Yeah.
It's really fantastic, and it is the coolest thing that Walter Goggins has ever done. Like, he's the man.
Yeah. Also, we're still waiting for the new series from Dark Horse Comics called Kickdown. That's supposed to come out in July. Again, it looks like it's one of the writers for Cyberpunk 2077. actually is the principal writer for the Phantom Liberty, Tomasz Marchuka, with the artist being...
Yeah, no, the Polish names lose me.
Yeah, the way they're spelled and the way they're pronounced are two different ways. But that's I'm looking forward to that series.
Who knew they were Welsh?
Not as bad as the Welsh. They only have like one or two constants that are silent, whereas the Welsh have 15. So that's supposed to be coming out in July. Still haven't heard on any type of release date for anything for Cyberpunk Red other than it's coming. The Edgerunner mission kits we're still waiting on, as well as Tales from the Forlorn Hope, which is supposed to come out later this year.
Oh boy, that one I will have to take a look at.
Yeah, Will Moss is actually coming back and helping out with that.
Yeah, he's writing the foreword for it, or the opening story. The Cyberpunk Street Gangs game has had a couple of extra releases. I hesitate to call expansions. Yeah, that's the word.
Yes,
Expansions.
yes.
Oh, back to movie news real quick. For those of you interested, AMC is going to be having a limited showing of Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence later this year.
Really?
June 23rd. With a new 4K restoration.
Nice.
If I may put in a moment, Ghost in the Shell, if I may put in a heartfelt plea to anyone listening, if anyone hears where you can get physical media of the Ghost in the Shell series after second gig, for God's sake, tell me.
So like a Rise or that Ghost in the Shell standalone
From Netflix.
complex 2045 or whatever.
Anything past second gig. Sony has released Zilcho outside of Japan, and they made like one run and said, "We're done."
Yeah, you'll probably have to go through bootlegs for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not ideal, but if they refuse to release, you got to do what you got to do.
And I can see Japan still making that media, just because of their culture. I mean, any culture that's still using fax machines as a viable technology is definitely retro.
CDs are more.
Guys,
CDs are still more popular in Japan than streaming services.
Hang on here. Refax machines. I have friends who work in shipping business and in offices. I also have friends who work with legal documents, and including overseas. If you need a document to be signed, e-documents do not cut the mustard legally. You need fax machines.
It's also pretty hard to hack a fax.
Yeah. Fax machines are pretty much only useful for when you need a hard copy document now.
Right, but they're still more prolific in Japan than they are in business today.
Oh yeah. Everywhere else, everyone's replaced them with printers.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh wow. Does this mean that in Japan somewhere there's a teletype?
There might well be.
They're sending out Morse code on the wire.
Yeah.
Oh, that still gets used, by the way. It's it's awfully hard to bollocks your transmission when you're sending Morse code. It's also a very low. The data density on Morse code is very low.
Yeah.
It's brute force.
I mean, it's like for naval communications, it's still a necessary and viable means of communication.
Yeah, the last, and I don't think we've gotten. Well, I think the DLC for April was already published by Artel Sorian. The last thing I think is, so we mentioned Monster Fight Club doing the combat zone for edgerunners. So they actually did a pre-order that was launched a couple weeks ago. It's going to be ending in about 2 weeks for the pre-order, and they have two versions of the game. One is the regular game that you can purchase. That particular game is going to have the acrylic standees. The price point on that is $100. And then you have the collector's edition, which will have miniatures, 24 miniatures, and that's at $250. Both versions, you're getting the model called The Moment, in which it takes the famous death of Rebecca when Adam Smasher is coming down on top of her and going to be crushing her to death, and her blasting
Smasher
away.
gets a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, so
Reebok's, Rebecca's.
So that miniature is going to be sold with both, from what it looks like. So, plus you get the game. So, price point wise, you know, if you're only looking for the minis, you're probably paying around $10 a mini, compared to like Gangs of Night City, which I still feel is a great cost. I know, Craig, you mentioned that they're going to be hard to paint, but I accept that challenge. And I'm going to see if I can paint mine up. So, yeah.
It's all priced out of my reach, so.
Well, at $10 a mini, ow, this is the reason I said ow.
Yeah.
I'm still playing Warhammer, guys, and that beats Warhammer prices.
It does.
Ouch. For a Kickstarter, no less.
It's not a Kickstarter.
Stores as well? Oh.
Yeah, so this is going to be, there's going to be two versions that are, this is just pre-ordering. So it's not even going through a Kickstarter.
So it will be in stores? Well,
yes.
Okay, then. All right, I give them points on that.
I don't know when it'll be in stores, but the pre-order ends May 15th.
Late summer.
Probably.
Late summer.
Most than likely.
Yeah.
I believe Monster Fight Club does a lot of the production and manufacturing in-house. I don't think they manufacture in China. Whereas the Gangs of Night City, that board game, was definitely coming over from China. I could be wrong.
You could be, but if you're looking for me to bet that you're wrong, you're going to have a long wait.
Yeah.
I'm betting you're right.
I would imagine. Businesses are gonna cut costs where they can.
Yeah, but the way, the interviews I've heard of from the guy who runs, I think his name's John, from Monster Fight Club, just the interview he's talked about it, Combat Zone, in the beginning. It seems like they are very much a U.S. base and have the necessary equipment to do production. I don't know at what scale, though.
Well, the advantage to that is that some people may remember a little thing called COVID-19, which happened, which really appeared first in Wuhan province, which is the main manufacturing province of China, and thus the world. So basically, it sounds like what do you call them? Monster games?
Monster Fight Club is
Monster
the company.
Fight Club has made the very wise decision of investing in their own stuff. They may not do it as cheaply or as efficiently, but they're not going to be caught with cut off at the knees if something goes wrong.
Yeah,
Good on them.
and John, the founder of the company, he split ways from Gale Force 9 back in 2018 and started up this company. I mean, originally it was doing like terrain pieces. And then he approached Mike and showed Mike some of the stuff he was thinking about doing, and Mike loved the miniatures and went in all in with John and collaborated. So not only does he do the Cyberpunk miniatures, but he also does the Witcher as well.
I mean, edgerunners, or not edgerunners, Danger Gal Dossier, that was nothing but miniatures as art. And it worked.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So, so I think that's all that I can think of when it comes to Cyberpunk news. Any comics, Derek, that you know of that are coming out?
Nothing like really that jumps out. I got really excited about a comic called what in the hell was it called? Hold on, give me just one second. Freak Snow, thinking it was going to have something to do with like the post-apocalypse world. But no, it's just some goofy like treatise on religion, basically. It's okay. Beyond that, I don't. There's a new Spawn series called Rat City that looks to take place in a cyberpunk future. I haven't been able to pick it up yet, but the art looked neat. Kind of like a Spawn version of Batman Beyond or Spider-Man 2099. I'm not a big fan of Spawn as a character or franchise, but I'm willing to check that out.
Oh, yeah. So another thing that I don't think I've ever mentioned on this show, and it's been out for a while, since last year. My wife actually bought it. It is called the Big Book of Cyberpunk. It is available through Amazon as well as some other vendors, but it is an anthology of like over 100 cyberpunk stories.
Nice.
And she's been slowly reading stories through it, and she really likes it, and is trying to force me to start reading it. If I was a reader, I'd definitely probably pick it up immediately, but I'm afraid I'm not much of a reader. But I'm going to try to get to it.
Check that out.
Yes.
That sounds awesome.
Yes, the Big Book of Cyberpunk. It's not specifically anything to do with the game or any of the other Cyberpunk tabletop games. It's strictly just the genre. But so check it out. Wife has read it, so she's loving all the stories so far. Says they're pretty well written, so that's always a good sign. So let's get into it. So Craig, you're looking to write vehicle rules for Fusion / Mecton, and wanting to help a reader help.
I guess I should preface this for people that I haven't been bending their ear on. I haven't, even when I was writing it, guys, I wasn't pleased with Max Metal. Okay? It just seemed clunky to me. And I'm the guy who made the system.
You were the main writer?
Yeah, by way of explanation, I always wondered why we didn't do stuff with Mecton, which was one of the better systems around. And by way of explanation or excuse or whatever, I will simply quote Benjamin Wright. It was the parameters we had at the time. Okay.
Yeah.
What one of the things I liked about Cyberpunk Red is that by and large the vehicle rules, an awful lot of rules, seem to have caged liberally from fusion, which I think is a fantastic idea. It's very good, particularly since fusion, from its early inception, and which one of you is it again who's a fan of Bubblegum Crisis?
That would be me.
Right. Well, you remember that a couple of the Bubblegum Crisis supplements, before and after, I think, had...
Before and after and X.
Yeah, one of the two, but I think it was before and after, that had rules in it for modifying the fusion-based rules so that you could use them in Cyberpunk 2020. And that, I thought, was a fantastic idea. Unfortunately, you see, this came out after I wrote Max Metal.
Quite a bit after.
Yeah, so I am I'm motivated now to try to redo Max Metal, not recast it, just redo. I'm not even pulling up the gas cap and driving a new car in underneath it. I just want to remake the car in a format that could be used both in Cyberpunk Red and in 2020.
Okay.
Essentially making a make-your-own vehicle and powered armor system using Mecton, the simplified Mecton from the Fusion system, as a basis. And
Makes sense to me.
Huh?
I said that makes sense to me.
Right. Well, for instance, I don't know if either of you guys has ever done much with Mecton.
No.
No.
Okay. Mecton started out as a simple system back in the 80s by the by the Pondsmiths, yes, plural. I do believe that Mike's brother had a big part in it. He was credited anyway. And it was a way better anime making system than the reigning system of the time, which was BattleTech.
That I believe 100%.
It's not hard.
Yeah.
BattleTech is its own animal.
It truly is.
It's all about the crunch.
It hears the old giant robots move slowly and the American giant robot.
BattleTech relates to giant robots as the platypus relates to most of the other life forms on Earth. It's its own weird offshoot of mecha biology.
Yes.
But Mecton, a German fellow, I cannot remember his name, wrote the technical manual where he enlarged on the rules for making mechs and equipment. And then Michael McDonald, bless his heart, hopefully I'll get in touch with him someday, codified it in the Mecton Zeta and Zeta Plus, which, and you can understand how complex it is when I say the goal was any mecha from any anime you can make, any machine you can make with those rules. Now, that's a big spectrum, guys.
Yes, it is.
That's a pretty bold statement.
You can go from cultural catgirl Nuku Nuku and Major Motoko Kusanagi all the way up to Unicron and beyond. With those rules. Oh yeah. If it's anime, you can do it. Now, the idea is for Cyberpunk and for most things, you don't need all that complexity. You really don't. Oh, by the by, this is something about the Bubblegum Crisis game. It introduced an entirely new rule to Mecton. fusing. Remember the boomer power to fuse with things?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually my least favorite part of the show, but
Yeah,
But it was neat.
Unfortunately, since Bubblegum Crisis is essentially comic books, it really is comic book superheroes.
oh yeah,
You don't have to make sense. I mean, when you say you don't have to make sense and you're comparing it to Mobile Suit Gundam, no, you don't have to make sense. So what I'd be doing is basically using sort of the same kind of idea as I did in Max Metal, where you have different, more or less body sizes of vehicles. And then you can customize, you choose your body size, and you customize its capabilities. Power to weight ratio, armor, what's inside of it, how tough the frame is or how not tough it is, and its suspension system. And then you enter a small area of some complexity, which is what kind of equipment you'll give it. And no, I'm not talking nearly as complex as the powered armor rules as from Max Metal. Those kind of went over the edges, I think.
What, cramming
they definitely
50
boiled
pieces
it
of
down
weapons
into
in there?
some minutia.
Like energy sponges to absorb electrical shock. That was a thing. That's a piece of equipment you can get in Max Metal for powered armors.
Yeah, some of it goes a bit to the goofy side, but others, I mean, most of it is pretty good. I know you're disappointed with it, but I love the framework that it provides. I love the.
I'd be looking to expand that,
Mhm.
and what's more important, to make something where the system is more the simplified fusion system, which is what Red uses, by the way.
Yeah.
For you have hit points, and you have armor, and you have weapon damage, and you don't need anything else. You certainly don't need the original Mechton system where you roll to hit, you roll to see where you hit, and then you apply the damage to the armor and then to the internal structure. Very BattleTech.
Yeah, a lot of that.
And it slows down gameplay. Wow, it slows down gameplay.
Yes.
Cinematic, it's not. And I would be looking to see something more like that. If I had my druthers, I would totally simplify it down to the rules from the vehicle penetration rules from Warhammer 40k 3rd edition, which are the most realistic vehicle penetration rules I've ever seen in any war game, ever.
But are
either the damage penetrates or it doesn't. If it does, if it's a minor penetration, it's likely to cause some sort of impediment that won't just necessarily kill the vehicle. If it's a major penetration, the vehicle's in deep trouble.
Right.
That's it. It was quick. You rolled the hit, you rolled the damage, or pardon me, you rolled the hit, you rolled penetration, you rolled for damage, and that was it. But that doesn't quite talk about minimalist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Twilight 2000 is a fantastic game. It's a hell of a setting, but it is very geared towards its theme and doesn't work very well outside of it.
Exactly. But yeah. So I'm down with the system that Red has, since it's modified fusion. Why reinvent the wheel? One of the best decisions I thought was made in Red. Let's just go ahead and use a good system.
Right.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah,
and I would also
and that's the kind of balance you kind of look for in a game, right? So there is some criticism on Red that, especially with the combat, that they've simplified it too much, right? Versus giving that semi-realistic feel to combat, which I think, that the interlock system kind of was getting very close to a real life simulator for combat. However, like to your point, well, if you're going to roll a location and determine damage and determine armor, that it slows down the game drastically. But then there's also the other extreme, which is roll one die and see if you hit. If you hit, you win, right?
Right.
And I don't know what's the best kind of blend. I think there's a sweet spot to it,
It depends upon the user.
Yep.
Some people can manage those multiple die rolls really quick. I've seen some wargamers that can pull off some really slick business, but others, it will just bog you down.
Right. And it gets to the core of the problem, which is knowing the rules. The more rules you have, the more it's going to be harder for people to learn, right? Or memorize.
The more mistakes you're likely to make, yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes.
It's like to your point of BattleTech being its own beast. And I've been playing BattleTech since '86. So I know the rules, and the rules haven't changed too much. So when I do play it like a con and there's new players there, I think they get overwhelmed, even though a lot of the veterans can read off, oh yeah, you rolled a 7, you hit the arm or the center torso, and
7. Oh no, dude, central torso.
Yeah.
Come on.
Right.
By the way, I started playing in 1982.
Yeah, so there's that thing in which pretty much all the charts, everything, and a new player coming in is they're like, wow, this is an interesting game. However, you know all these rules and I can't learn them, and I don't know all the special various rules of especially hey, you got hit, you took this much damage, or you had this actuator hit, and you have to make a piloting roll. Well, you also did this, which requires another piloting roll, and another piloting roll, and all the bonuses equal this, and you can get bogged down very quickly. Now, there's a certain type of person who likes that, right? Who likes the complexity of all these rules and simulating more realistic.
Nervously raises his hand.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
But here's the thing: as a GM, you have to know when to use those rules and when not.
Running GURPS. Enough said. May I toss in the nervously raising hand? Okay, who's in this club? Starfleet Battles. Me? Only me?
I've seen it played. I've never played it.
I avoid large groups of Star Trek fans as often as possible.
Well, Starfleet Battles are a special group of fandom. They are that group that was just mentioned that likes rules minutiae.
Right.
Wow.
Well, it's similar to Iron Crown, right? And that system.
God, Rollmaster.
Yeah, Rollmaster, right? There's
Rollmaster.
Rollmaster, Lord of the Rings, whatever else they produced, in which you had charts upon charts. Sure, it's very, very realistic. However, people who like to roll dice and look up
very
charts.
Detailed.
Yeah.
Speaking of Rollmaster, it's Rulemaster, but I call it by what everyone knows it, Rollmaster. Did you guys know that the fellow who wrote the powered armor rules for Max Metal was a guy who wrote rules for ICE?
No.
Yeah.
Was that
explains why the powered armor rules are as goofed up as they are, doesn't it?
That goes
Mark
a long way.
Colborn?
I never met him, never knew him, but I just heard from David Ackerman that the guy worked for ICE, and I'm going, why did you hire him? They are known for rules complexity and charts upon charts upon charts.
Yeah, so I think it's the type of people, and it also is a maturity as well. But getting to your point, I think nowadays players, especially role playing people, want very dynamic dice rolling. They want to be quick, getting into the action immediately, resolving whatever action they have as quick as possible, so that way they're not waiting for their turn, right?
Right. Complex systems interrupt the rhythm.
Yeah.
You got no groove, man. You got no groove. And suddenly it's kind of like, okay, we're taking a break for the action. Everyone freeze in place, and oh my gosh, now I'm remembering the end credits of Police Squad back in the day, where the instead of actually freeze framing, they had all the actors freeze.
Yeah.
And they kept the camera rolling. I'm just imagining a cyberpunk fight where, whistle tweets, referee, all right, everyone freeze, and you see people frozen trying to maintain action poses.
Right.
Waiver. That sounds like something the bozos would try, you know that?
Yes.
I don't know if you guys follow Viva La Dirt League, but they've got a couple of skits that are tailored just around that very subject. And they're awesome.
That's funny stuff, man. That's funny stuff. Yeah. Okay. Powered armor. For instance, what I'm thinking of in powered armors. Okay. You're familiar with Bubblegum Crisis, where the stat line of the powered armors was a small box.
Yeah.
It told you what your speed was, what your maneuver value was, which is how hard it is to work in. Best way to put maneuver value is, I'm afraid Mobile Suit Gundam terms is an excellent way to do it. If you've ever seen any of the Xeon Aqua Mecha, the undersea mecha,
Yeah.
big, burly, blundering barrels of monster. Their maneuver value is extremely high, and then maneuver value is a negative, which means they are clumsy and big giants. And they are. By the way, don't get hit by them. Any other mobile suit in the game, if one of those guys smacks you with one of those claws, you're in pieces, literally. They are giants. And by comparison, Char Aznable's special red hot rod that he jury-rigged up so that it has no maneuver value whatsoever, and it is fast. By the way, anyone else but Char tries to make that work, it'll kill them. The G-forces will rip them apart.
Yeah, he was a character, that's for sure.
Right. Oh yeah, he's a player character. Well, heck, he's the main hero of the series, really.
Yeah.
But
Char's Revenge is the very first Gundam thing I ever saw.
Well, I'll just put it this way. As far as exits, Char wins. At the end of Mobile Suit Gundam, dude rides off into the sunset on a white horse.
Yeah, I mean...
Sorry, he wins.
That's all you need.
After killing off the entire family that killed off his father and mother. So, yeah, he wins.
Yeah, he had a heck of a character arc, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, he was the only interesting character in the game, in the show, pardon. Kind of deliberately. But for powered armors, instead of a huge sheet, I'm just talking a small box that would tell you how many hit points it has, how much it takes off of your reflexes to use it, what kind of speeds you can expect as for running, jumping, walking, and possibly, jump jets, what its armor is, and then what kind of weapons it has. That's it. The picture that's currently up there on the AI art debate, I could fit the entire box into that, and it'd be readable without magnifying it. Hey, that's the fun of Fusion.
Yep.
And I can go farther. Are you guys familiar with a Fusion game called Armored Trooper Votons?
Yes.
Heard of it.
And the anime it's based off of.
Oh, God, yes. The anime it's based on. Oh, and the models. I still have a 1/35th scale model left over from the 1980s. No, 1990s that I bought. I'm afraid to put it together because I have to. It cracks open to show Kiriko Kyubey and inside the cockpit, so I have to paint all of that before painting the rest of it.
Yeah, I've got two Votom's toys, like the Crab Walker and one of the big meaty
They're great stuff.
mecha things.
Armored troopers, an armored trooper in cyberpunk terms, and this is something. Cyberpunk is a lot more hard science than most anime.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's grounded.
Yeah, it's grounded, which means, as thank you Bandai, Sunrise Bandai, we have seen how much work goes into a built out of aluminum and plastic 1-to-1 scale Gundam.
Yeah. We
Which
just
is,
sadly took that down.
they're going to build it back again. They better. They better.
One can hope.
Oh, they need to put up the original RX-78-2, and they need to give it its the match to the pair. They need Char Zaku there too. They need them both. Sorry, it's like salt and pepper. You don't have one without the other.
I mean, yeah, they should have two of them facing each other, and like have a mock fight every now and then. That would be awesome.
Oh my God.
Because they move. Like that was the coolest thing about it. They're not just giant statues. Like they move. Or at least the one in Japan did. Yeah.
You would have to have a 150-foot tall crane moving at excessive slowness, piloted by someone at a computer who is an actual Japanese puppet master, and I mean the ancient ones, the art that's still practiced to this day, in order to do the famous flying kick. It would be doable, but
no, you're never gonna get that. Like, well, I won't say never, but probably not in our lifetimes.
oh, the amount of money it would cost and the possibility of damage. But it would be so cool.
Yeah, it would be very cool until that thing drops.
Yeah. Gunge. Crash. Key rash.
Key rash.
So basically, vis-a-vis the sidebar in the powered armor section of Max Metal about ground pressure, that's kind of my Newtonian physics Bible for mecha in Cyberpunk. If you're too big, your ground pressure is too much, and there's not a lot of structures that will sustain you.
Yeah, you can't. Like you get big enough, and it'll like you can't support your own weight anymore.
Oh, you can. The ground won't. So an armored trooper, like something out of Votom's, 15 feet tall, 18 foot max, would be about as much as you could manage as far as a legged, well, bipedal. Bipedal mecha.
Yeah, that's the key rub right there is bipedal.
Now, on the other hand, Ghost in the Shell with their multi-ped tanks, now we're talking something different. Honestly,
Yeah,
I mean, Tachikomas in Cyberpunk with ease.
I mean, it was one of the first things I ever did was do a Shiro conversion. That in fact was, that was the very first article I ever submitted back when Paul Miner ran Data Fortress, was the Shiro Punk conversions, which gave Cyberpunk translations to Tachikomas, landmates, the various weapons and gear of Appleseed and Ghost in the Shell, the tanks from Dominion. Because Shiro Punk is, Shiro is the greatest. Like when it comes to the technical design of the near future, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm pretty screwy, but you know.
Now, somewhere along the way, I believe that Masamune Shiro was always a pen name, and I think at some point he was replaced. I don't know how you go from Appleseed with its like realistic depictions of women, like they're muscular, they look athletic, they look like they can actually fight, to the stick figures with water balloons stapled to their chests that he's doing now.
With the triple M size cleavage.
Actually, guys,
made out of Jello pudding.
And art styles evolve over time.
Yeah,
As
art styles
fact,
over time. I get that, but sensibilities.
Some of the artists that I know have gone to great lengths to try and destroy their works from the '80s because they're ashamed of them.
I mean, I don't know. Like with Shiro, it's the opposite for me. It's like the highly technical, fucking flawless line work to really god awful CGI.
And what he's doing now is stuff that sells.
Mm-hmm. You know, I get that porn sells, and that's what he does now. It's just very disappointing.
Which is, yes, it is disappointing. I agree with you. What was I thinking? Oh yeah. One item I want to put into this that I wanted to get your aspects on, and again, I make an appeal to anyone who listens to Forlorn Dopes. If you have an opinion, please leave it in the comments. I would like to see them. Is the idea of armor. Vehicle armor, particularly. Although personal armor is also a point. Have you guys ever heard of the cornstarch? The cornstarch phenomenon.
No.
Are you talking about adding it to water and making non-Newtonian liquids?
Like Mythbusters did. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. About 2 weeks ago, I read a Science Alert article. Great site if you're into science releases, where there are researchers that are taking that principle and applying it to polymers. The idea being that these polymers, which would be not liquid, but either flexible under low pressure circumstances, they would be quasi-flexible. But if you hit them with an impact, they firm up immediately. Okay. Now think about that. Think about that applied to body armor. Current military body armor uses multi-layered Kevlar with metallic ceramic plates at strategic locations. The plate, when struck by an impact like a bullet or a piece of shrapnel, cracks. Literally, it breaks. By breaking it, it absorbs the kinetic impact. To the point where, as I say, my friend who was in Baghdad for 24 straight months, and then he spent a number of months out at heat, out in the western desert, said that when we went in 2003 or 2002, when we went into Baghdad, our frontline troops were wearing our first class body armor and Ray-Bans because it's sunny. The Iraqi insurgents would shoot them with AK-74s with their tiny little junk rounds, and they would hit the armor, which, by the way, it hurts like crazy. It feels like you've been smacked in the gut with a pool cue.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It'd knock people over, but people would get right back up and keep on fighting. And the Iraqis, who had very limited information about the outside world for decades, were honest to goodness thinking that we were deploying T-800 Terminators against them.
Yeah.
The psychological ops people found out about this far too late. Otherwise, our invasion would have been punctuated by an endless soundtrack from Terminator.
Dun 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 dun. That would be terrifying.
Isn't it though? As it stands, my friend who drove a Bradley and then gunned a Bradley after a while said that they outfitted loudspeakers to their vehicles and would drive around playing the Imperial March from Star Wars.
Right. So my thinking around that, and granted I am not a scientist, the whole concept of a liquid versus ceramic plates versus Kevlar, with that type of material, you can make it lightweight, right? Because you can put in little air gaps, right, in between it, and create some type of mesh, versus a liquid, which is always going to be solid. So there's always going to be a weight issue between.
They're solids. They're just not. They're pliable solids. You see, that firm up. The point being that if they firm up to intercept a bullet, they're not going to crack. They'd be essentially kind of quasi self-healing.
Right.
Which would mean not ablative at all. Unless you hit them with something, and if you hit them with something strong enough to break them, which is to ablate them, I don't think that the wearer is going to care that his armor is ruined. Whatever's behind the armor is in worse shape.
Yeah,
Right.
that's probably true.
But when I read this, I was sitting there going, that's interesting. Body armor could be made lighter. Oh, this was another fun thing. The actual research that's being undertaken isn't about body armor at all. It's about utilities, guys. The researchers are wanting to replace power panels, control panels,
Mm-hmm.
Switches, knife switches and stuff in outdoor utilities that come under considerable assault from Mother Nature.
Right.
Huh.
So to their polymer mix, they're adding a 20% by volume polymer that's electrically conductive. Now, remember what I said about that electrical sponge to absorb electrical impacts in powered armor?
Yeah.
What happens if the whole darn suit is a Faraday cage?
Person inside is going to get electrocuted. Nor is the equipment.
No, it channels. Any electrical charge coming into the suit will simply channel into the ground.
Yeah.
Without touching whoever's inside it.
Yeah, but it makes communicating with your teammates fairly difficult.
You have holes in it, of course.
Sure.
Actually, the armor itself becomes a communicator.
Yeah.
Because you see, the whole thing can become a communicator. It can, of course, if someone drops a high tension line on you, no, your communications are not going to work while you're being such.
No, you're not. But yeah, it's basically you're just a big. If you're a Faraday cage, you're just a big antenna.
Yeah, and a big electrical conductor. So I guess if you really wanted to, you could have you and your buddies link arms and form a Broadway high kick line while being electrocuted by attention wires. That, of course, is incredibly cheeky. Yes, playing the can is de rigueur. Now we've turned away from the bozos and we've gone to the Philharmonic vampires, haven't we?
I mean, we're covering your favorites.
But that would be, and it came to me after thinking about it. Wait a minute. If this stuff gave way slowly under repeated assault, we have the plastic armor from Car Wars, which is another Cyberpunk product.
So
Think about it.
With this information, are you going to start cross-pollinating and making an Uncle Albert's catalog for him?
God, no. Oh God, no. Once was enough, please. Nightmares about that, guys. No.
Well, you won't have to edit it. You just have to create the stuff.
And edit it. That's even worse. You can ask Benjamin or David how it is to edit my stuff. They can tell you horror stories, I'm sure. And if they
One of these days we need to get all you guys on at the same time.
If they don't tell you horror stories, if they say it was easy, I will claim they are liars. My math alone. Oh, poor Benjamin. My math, I didn't double check my math, so he had to go over and correct it. And I feel so guilty to this day. I think part of the reason his hair is not the color it was 30 years ago is editing my stuff. So.
Well, didn't Derek Quintanar, wasn't he the editor-in-chief of most of the products?
A lot, yeah. Yeah, poor Derek was in it too, poor guy.
But he loved the math stuff, and he was more.
That's what he lived for.
he
the
needed
rules
to.
guy.
He was doing editing for Mecton,
Yeah.
which is a little math heavy. Um, but as far as armor, I would like to differentiate. They've already done some of this in Cyberpunk. Oh heck, we were having this discussion back for 2020. Soft armor, rigid armor, and then vehicle armor.
Yeah.
Vehicle armor, unless you made it to be ablative, vehicle armor is not ablative.
Yeah, because it
Sorry.
would take too much damage unless you're doing pretty heavy rounds.
Sorry for all the early 1980s systems which insisted everything was ablative. It's not.
Well, you put a big enough hole in it. But then again, if you put a big enough hole in the vehicle, it's probably not going to be running.
Boy, I'm trying to think of some decent pictures.
So getting back to like your general rule system. So you're thinking of the creation is you have armor. Again,
But
putting
the
it.
creation is you choose what size and type of vehicle you are making. And yes, guys, I want to extend this to watercraft, aircraft,
Okay.
AVs, airplanes, helicopters, submarines, surface ships, hovercraft.
Yeah.
I want to go the Mecton route, which is if it can freaking be made, I want people to be able to make it.
Right. Panzers, submarines, all that fun stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Not,
Maybe submersible hovercraft. I don't know.
yeah, you want a universal vehicle creation system.
Yes. Yes. UVCS. Oh, good grief. I am sure that if I did a Google search on the acronym UVCF or UVCS, I can find something in naval parlance that's actually that.
Probably.
Guaranteed. But yeah, I want a universal vehicle creation system. I'm drawing the line at spacecraft. Those are their own monsters.
Yeah, I would save that one for an expansion.
Rockets, spacecraft are rocket science. Who knew?
I guess the very definition.
And never forget that a rocket, here is the practical definition of a rocket. It is a controlled explosion. Now, those two words don't normally go together.
Well,
Ask anybody who plays with demolitions. Controlled explosion, really?
Yeah, they like that term.
Mm-hmm.
They like that concept.
Well, I keep thinking the T-shirt or the sign you can find from MythBusters that shows a stick figure running from an explosion, and the caption is "Warning: Science in Progress."
Yeah, Adam had some great fucking shirts.
That's pretty accurate too. But yeah,
Hell, I still enjoy listening to Adam's shows.
He's great. He's great. But you select the vehicle type that you want, and then you have choices to make. Your basic choices are power. That's going to be tricky because I'm going to be trying to go with power to weight ratios, guys.
yeah.
In order to, you can have something be really heavy. It's not going to move very fast. Because, mass is the enemy of kinetic motion.
And with the power units, were you actually also thinking of like just a generic power source, or were you going to have like? To me, with Cyberpunk Red, it seems like you can have similar to like Traveler, in which you have different tech levels, right? In which a corporation who, for example, Militech, still has a higher tech level, as it were, compared to other corporations,
Well,
or like the Nomads, right? A Nomad would probably strap a a gas.
Whatever they could get.
Yeah, gas engine from
Right.
what's a dual knucklehead engine strapped to the vehicle to give it power.
Yeah.
That was
Guys, I can even
source
see
was the biggest problem I had with the maximum metal power armor rules is they go into all that other detail, but they don't talk about how long the power source, whatever it is, lasts before you need to get back to base and recharge, refuel, whatever.
I'm thinking for powered armor some really high pointed batteries, but you make a very good point, and I will have to include that. You can have the range. That's a very good point right there. As a matter of fact, grabbing a notepad and a pen, vehicle range for power source. Is that my Sharpie? No, that's my Faber-Castell. I do not use a Faber-Castell for writing notes, guys. That's for lining things like gunpla.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's presumed that they use whatever the same type of battery that cybernetics use, and again, cybernetics there should have been maintenance rules for cybernetics in 2020.
Yeah, I would have to refamiliarize myself with them.
Like there are none, and eventually I'll add some to Interlock Unlimited.
Sure, one of the Chromebooks, Chromebook 2, I think, has some maintenance rules in them.
Yeah. A little bit.
Hang on a sec, guys.
A little bit. They're not
totally fleshed out, right? They're kind of like, hey, use these as you need to. But again, I think a lot of that maintenance was hand waving, but yet they put in, how much a meal costs, right? Or how much a week of kibble costs, or how much an apartment for a month cost.
Like the chances of the body rejecting the cybernetics. Like there were all sorts of things they could have done that I think were just missed opportunities. And yeah, I get people don't want to think about that kind of shit. They just want to plug in the groovy tech and play.
Well,
how many people have rigid calendars detailing when and where and how they need to maintain their car? It's background tech.
Yeah.
It's background tech.
It is.
But it's also playing the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how much of a life simulator are you going to try to create? Some players like it. Some players don't. I know I have a mixed group of my players. Some players really like that. Some players could give it a lesser crap, right? And as soon as you start getting into that type of area, I'm
gonna have to remember that phrase. A lesser crap. I'm gonna have to use it.
There are people who still prefer playing GURPS, and there are people who play Savage Worlds or whatever.
Well, it's
rules like bullshit is going on today.
That's a good comparison. Really complex versus
super simple.
Simple.
But then there's also the people who like the complexity to be there, but they don't necessarily use it, right? And that's one of my.
Okay. Go ahead.
That's one of my criticisms of Cyberpunk Red, right? Is for me a system should have enough rules to cover the majority of things you want, as well as add optional rules to allow you to dial it up, dial it back. And that was the one thing that Mike in the interlock system with the base book, he's like, I view, and even Fusion, he's like, I view it as dials, right? You can dial everything up
100%.
and add more complexity, add more, or dial it all the way back to make it more simpler.
Right. Yeah, that is the absolute background philosophy that I tried to stick with Interlock Unlimited. Like, yes, there are tons of rules that I added for every situation. I expanded the location table, but none of that needs to be used every time. Those are there when those decisions matter.
Right, and I think
Like, I don't. Go ahead.
I think with the interlock system in the red system to blend it, they should have had that ability to, when you're dialing it down, to remove hit locations completely. Right.
I do believe that those kind of rules should have been DLC. Don't put it in the main book, just put it as optional.
Yeah.
Hey, that sounds like a good DLC for Red. CP Red options.
Right.
I mean, I really feel like they should have done it the other way around. I feel like they should have stuck with Interlock as far as the as far as the combat goes, and then released like Red as a simplified version of the rules that can plug and play interchangeably when necessary. But yeah, keep it as a separate DLC. But like the way the Red mechanics work, it doesn't work for me. Right. And this is never more obvious than when you see half the stuff people come up with as homebrews that looks like something out of Dungeons and Dragons. And like, I saw some dude posting this this gun that he was real proud of that he made, and it's like it's an exotic and it fires this and it has these effects, and like, dude, this just sounds like a magic item from Dungeons and Dragons. Chill the fuck out. Or they're creating martial arts that have special powers, and I'm just...
To many people, technology is magic, and so is martial arts. Of course,
yeah.
It does not help at all that throughout the centuries, martial arts has been portrayed as a kind of specialized, almost magical thing, you know, and we have Goku chanting Kamehameha and all that stuff. And I'm going, why is he summoning a Hawaiian king? And so yeah, most people, to them, it is magic because they don't understand the machinery behind it.
Well, plus that's the gamer ethos and it just...
But I look at that stuff as that's their game, that's their campaign world, right? My game, my campaign world is going to be a lot different than other people's campaign worlds.
Right. The overall trick here is, what do you want to do with it? And what I'm going to try to accomplish with this system is something that's easy enough to use, but it's not so outsizedly silly,
right,
and complex. Well, I don't know who wrote this up. All right, I'm going back to Mekton here. It could have been Michael. It could have been a number of other people. It could have been a team. It could have been a team effort for all I know, because, you know, they did a lot of team effort stuff for which I have only one thing to say. Wonderful. But there was a system written up for Mekton, the cinematic system. You may or may not have heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, okay.
Don't know much about it, but I've heard of it.
The cinematic system was a way of taking all of Mekton's complexity and ralphing it down so that you would have the ability to play without losing, the ability to play with multiple units without losing yourself in it. You go from something that has a Battletech-like complexity, where each servo, each part of a mecha has its own amount of hit points and its own armor, okay? And you have to roll location and then have the damage affect the armor, which was ablative, and have the damage affect the internal damage, which was also ablative, etc. ad nauseum. So a fight between two mecha became about like a fight in Battletech with fewer weapons being fired. Okay?
Yeah, I can see that.
Cinematic system. You fire your weapon or linked weapon set, you roll to hit. If you hit, then you roll 2d6. I have since modified that chart extensively, but you roll 2d6 on a chart. You compare the weapon's damage to, plus some modifiers, some things have modifiers like beam saber weapons, to the structural integrity, that sounds familiar if you play Max Metal, to the structural integrity of the target. And you roll 2d, you basically subtract the SI from the damage, and you roll on the corresponding integer table, and that'll show you how much damage you've done to it. You may end up causing a critical hit, you may end up doing so much damage that the target is not in real good shape anymore. It's quick, it's easy, it's over, and you can have a dozen mecha on the table at once on each side and still manage it. Whereas that would take you all day long if you were doing it with the old rules. I'm not going to go to that level, but I want to make something that's more, okay, I damage it, I do this much damage, I might get a critical effect. Which is another question I want to ask you guys, and anyone who's listening to comment on, critical effects. I'm taking it that you guys have heard of some controversy about the critical hit rules in Cyberpunk Red? I haven't. I don't follow that. What's your guys' take? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Give me just 1 second. Crits in red, I mean, they removed the location table, so the crits in red just come across as random to me. I'm not sure of what controversy you're talking about. But the I don't care for the way it's done. Like, there's a reason I don't. There are reasons I don't play red. And that boils down to at least one of them.
And what are your reasons? I am curious.
I prefer the more grounded setting of 2020. So I prefer the setting of 2020. I prefer the rules of Interlock. I don't care for simple systems. I don't want them overly complex either. But the setting of Cyberpunk is what drew me into the game. But it was the rules and how very, very different they were from anything else I'd tried playing. In particular, Dungeons and Dragons. It was those rules and the lethality and the drama that created that sucked me in and had like solidified my love for not only the genre but gaming itself. And as such, I compare any set of rules I run across in a game to Cyberpunk 2020's Interlock. And now my own Interlock Unlimited. The lethality of the location tables, the drama that created, the effects that it had, like you get hit in the leg and suddenly you can't walk, or your arm becomes useless. That works for me much better than just the random critical tables of Red, where aim shots aren't really a thing. There are so many rules, combat rules in Red, that I just look at and scratch my head that I can't get into it.
Well, again, so, and I've seen this and heard several players talk about the various situations, especially when it comes to combat, right? And as a GM, when running combat, it's very difficult to do, especially to keep the attention of everybody. Especially if you're working with various, and you're going to work with a lot of different people and personality types. One issue that I've always run into, especially with combat, is some people pay attention. Some people are quiet when it's not their turn. Some people continue to take their turn while other people are trying to do something, right? By mentioning things and trying to butt in and saying, oh, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to do this after that. And it's like, you've already done your turn. This is 3 seconds. You've already completed it. And how do you approach that and keep it within a time limit, right? Because I've had Cyberpunk combat can last, a full session of a 4-hour game, depending upon how many opponents are there, the complexity, whether it's a running battle. When you get into other games like D&D or other systems in which you have a lot of different options to do during combat, can stretch that time longer. And the more time that an individual player is sitting there not doing anything, the more likely they are to get bored. And especially in this day and age where, I think everyone has attention deficit disorders and need to fidget and do something constantly, you need to kind of push that narrative and push that combat quicker. You might have players who are able to sit there and be quiet, be observant, and be in the moment and respect the rest of the table, but you also have other players who don't. So how do you find that balance? Because sometimes you can't be choosy on the table you have, right? You have players, so you have to deal with all the different personalities and the ways they want to do things. And you also don't want to allow combat to take up the story. Because once you do that, then it's just turning into a war game, and you're not really doing story. You're doing combat after combat after combat, and that's something that I've seen, especially playing D&D. Is I'm going from one fight to the other fight to the other fight with a little bit of role playing in between. So yeah, so I think the modern way of gaming is you're trying to be more story driven, and some people like it, some people don't. Some people like the complexity, and again, that's something that you have to know your table, right? But when presenting rules or creating rules, you want to have that capability to be able to present those different options to a table and to a system, right? Do you have the people who love the crunch? Okay, if you love the crunch, here are these rules. If you don't like the crunch, then this rule, and this rule are optional. And I think that's why a lot of game systems have those options. I think the D&D, even though people are like, D&D 5e is so simplistic, no, it's not. They just have a lot of plugins that they can add that makes the game more and more complex. And of course, as a player, you're always like, I want more, I want more, I want more. And when you do that, you start making the game even more complex. But new players, are always, I need to learn first. And I think that's why systems like the Savage World or the Apocalypse, those systems are very simplistic in their approach to game system, and they're more towards the story and the narrative than mechanics, right?
I don't know. I've run Cyberpunk for 35 years now, 36, something. Yeah, combats can take a while, but they take a while in every game that I've ever played. But I've never had a problem with the story of the games.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the combat has never. I don't know. Maybe I've just been really lucky with my game groups, but it's never been just moving forward from one fight to the next. That's never been the situation.
And as I said, and me being a player in your game, you see that I avoid combat as much as possible, especially in Cyberpunk.
Yeah, no, you guys do everything you can not to get shot at.
Because that's the point, right?
When there is a fight, it happens pretty fucking quickly. Like, even with the advanced rules of Interlock Unlimited, it still happens pretty quickly.
Yeah. But I think that's what Red was trying to do.
4-hour stretches at a time, and that big fight you guys had in the swamp, that was the biggest fight of the campaign so far, and you guys had time for story before it, and then story afterwards.
Yeah. But that group, you have veteran players who've been playing for 10, 20 years of Cyberpunk. Like, right? So we know the rules.
It just comes down to that I'm very lucky with the people I play with. But if you play... Red is a far superior system for running something like a con game or a quick pickup game or getting somebody new into the genre. But it doesn't have the edge that I want in a long-term game.
Right.
Yeah, it does have some issues. One of my issues is the idea that no matter what kind of evasive maneuvers you do, you can't dodge bullets unless you're reflex 8 or more. That would come as a massive, massive shock to tens of generations of combat troops who have been shot at and who have shot at enemies who are moving, who can tell you in no uncertain terms, Serpentine works. As it turns out, shooting a moving target is a lot harder than a lot of nimnals think it is.
Yeah.
But you're not dodging the bullets as much as making yourself a harder target to hit. Like, those are two separate things.
Right.
Like,
But I do not believe Red has any mechanism to cover making yourself harder to hit.
Again,
No, instead you absolutely can dodge bullets in fucking Red.
There's dodging bullets and there's evading bullets. Even though they say, hey, you can dodge a bullet, we are abstracting combat, right? When you come to a tabletop game. So they might call it dodging, you could call it evading, I could call it, avoiding. The terminology is hard, right? To nail down, for all of us to agree. It's like, wait a minute, you're dodging a bullet. Well, I'm dodging, meaning I'm moving around and trying to avoid being hit. And
here's the thing with 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, that was like the pinnacle of the modern game movement, where they're trying to turn tabletop games to have them emulate video games as much as possible.
Right,
so
and they failed.
Like the entirety of the rules. The entirety of the rules was geared to get you from one combat to the next. And like if you look at the adventures printed before 4E, they like most of it was lore, or these are the people you encounter, this is the situation going on. A 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons adventure is like half a page of text, and then the rest is all combat encounters, miniature maps, stat blocks, shit like that.
Right.
The spells were completely geared around combat. You could no longer fly from like one town to the next because it had like a 3-minute duration or a 3-round duration or shit like that. And that has carried over into all the other games. Like Red very much is trying to emulate the mechanics of Cyberpunk 2077 instead of it being the other way around.
If I may issue an official retraction, looking at Friday Night Firefight, your Dex plus evasion skill do make your difficulty hit, so they do cover it. Enough said. Carry on, please.
Yeah.
But then you look at other game systems, and granted, I don't play a lot of very variable role playing games. I know I've played Traveler, right? So Traveler, their system is you have a target number, and that number can go up or down based upon the distance. Evading, yeah, evading. I don't think necessarily evading happens. It might be you get a dex roll. I forget. You have Call of Cthulhu, right? Which guns the person who's shooting either successful with their roll or they're not.
And don't forget the dodge skill in Call of Cthulhu, which is one of the most precious skills in the whole thing.
well, that's
saving throw.
That's for hand to hand, right? That's
no, it's for everything.
No, it's not. Not for 7th edition. They got rid of that. You can't dodge bullets.
Which is forcefully.
Well,
I want my players to dodge bullets. Like at that point, you might as well be playing The Last Dragon and catch bullets with your teeth.
Well, with Call of Cthulhu, you're fighting. You're not really fighting people with guns. You're fighting monsters and other people trying to stab you with sacrificial knives. So.
Don't forget, cultists have access to Tommy guns.
They do, but it's most of the adventures I've run, they don't always have guns, unless. And if they do have guns, players are like, "Oh crap, I don't want to fight them."
The focus of Cthulhu isn't really about combat anyway.
It shouldn't.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. No. It's about being terrified out of your skull at the very existence of what's happening in the world around you.
But that's the same thing with Cyberpunk, right? Combat should not be the focus. Which it kind of has.
That all depends on the kind of game you're running. Some
True.
people want to run Blade Runner. Some people want to run RoboCop.
Or some people want to run Demolition Man.
It also depends upon the danger level that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Or perhaps not danger levels, perhaps the wrong word. How much conflict you are looking for. If you want to run an entirely corporate game, say, where it's all about political maneuvering, that's fine. Congratulations. You've got at least half of Herbert's original book, Dune. You really do. And but if you want to run, let's say, here we go again. If you want to run one of the wackier little stories from Judge Dredd called Crime Alley, or Gang Alley. It wasn't Crime Alley, it was Gang Alley. And it was basically the Judge Dredd take on The Warriors. The movie from, what was it, 79, I think?
One of my favorites of all time.
Yeah. You'd like it, and then you'd like Gang Alley.
I've read every Judge Dredd that's ever been printed.
But the long and short of it is, Dredd drops into a place that's so overridden with gangs that even the judges don't go there. He drops in to arrest a guy to serve a warrant on a gang leader called Cooley Bunny. And through comic mishaps, or unfortunate mishaps, they end up stranded there. Dredd loses his lawgiver, and they have to walk out of the place armed with Dredd's day stick and their capabilities.
And his boot knife. Don't forget his boot knife.
He never did use it. He preferred to use his day stick.
Well, yeah, because it's more distant.
They took small arms fire, not very accurate. Rocket fire, not very accurate. And Molotov cocktail fire, at which point Dredd says, I can kick it back at you, and does so. And an awful lot of hand-to-hand.
That was
yeah.
That was back in the day when Judge Dredd was full of reference and Easter eggs, and the stories tended to be a little bit goofier.
It still is.
Of course it still is.
Yet. Oh no! And in one story that they had, Dredd actually did the "be seeing you" out of the prisoner.
John Wagner and Barry Kitson are probably they're the two nicest guys from the comics industry that I've ever personally interacted with. And I met them in I met Kitson when he was doing Legion in like '91. And we had some letter correspondence. I was trying to get him to read a comic book script I had written at the time, and he had me come meet him at a convention in '92, where he introduced me to Wagner and had me give my script to Wagner. And I've still got the letter that Wagner wrote, his notes on my like single page or single issue script that I handed over to him. They're great guys. I'm sorry about that tangent.
Yeah,
No,
no
I worry about John Wagner's health.
Yeah, he's getting up there.
He's the last member of the original crew.
Yeah.
As
Losing
dead. Grant is dead. Ian Gibson is dead. Ron Smith is dead. They've all died of being like old and stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, and Wagner, he's been doing that comic straight out for
1978.
1978. Jesus Christ.
I know, right?
Like
going on 50 years.
And he writes a ton of other stuff at the same time.
He's done Batman. He's done all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's insane. But yeah, he is the last of the originals to work on 2000 AD. And
mind you, they've got some up and comers who are probably in their late 30s or early 40s who are pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, 2000 AD is the launch bed for every British artist or writer worth his salt to ever grace a comic book page.
A number of whom go on to write episodes for Doctor Who.
Yeah, or Garth Ennis, who went on to do Preacher and The Boys.
Right. By the way, Garth Ennis is one of the good ones for 2000 AD. I'm convinced that in order to be considered to be an actual, honest-to-goodness science fiction author in Britain, you have to have had an episode of Doctor Who.
Probably.
Probably.
I'm casting my fishing line and reeling you guys back in. So the vehicle concepts for I mean, it seems like you want to try to make it a bit more generic to be able to plug into any fusion system or even an interlock. So you talked about the armor and the setup and the power with a frame. I assume that you're going to have like a list of the various weapons. Is it going to be similar to and the one thing with Maximum Metal when it came to power armor, it was very BattleTech-esque, right? In that you had various slots within every location. Are you seeing as more generic?
I am going to have to do something like that with regards to interior equipment. For instance, let us say you have an armored bus, essentially, which is the kind of thing that police and security departments use. It's basically kind of the same chassis as a fire truck. Okay. And they use it as a riot wagon.
Yep.
If that armored bus, or if this riot wagon has a turret-mounted weapon, you can take a lot of that internal space and throw it away, because suddenly it's carrying an awful lot of machinery. There's a lot to a turret that's underneath the turret.
Yeah.
Rotating machinery. So I will have to have some sort of internal slots. And yes, I'm going to call them spaces, because what else can I call it? It is space. And I know that's Car Wars and BattleTech and everything else, but what the heck, it's established. There will be spaces for internal equipment. There will also be limits for the amount of external equipment you can carry, simply because, well, no one is going to try to put an MLRS launcher on a motorcycle.
You say that.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say.
Unless that motorcycle is being ridden by a mobile suit or other giant mecha, in which case, that's been done.
I don't know. I can see a nomad techie being a mad genius and being like, that's a challenge I'm willing to take on.
I mean, I've seen people. I've seen a recoilless rifle cannon mounted to a Vespa. So
yes, the Italians did that.
Yeah.
Yes,
So there is no limit to what people will attempt.
Now, there are certain things that physics just won't manage. And by the way, an MLRS launcher is about 30 feet long. It's about the size of a trailer hauled behind a rig.
I'm just saying. I've seen some crazy shit.
However, if your motorcycle is being ridden by, say, a Veritech from Robotech, yeah, okay, I can see that.
Now I've got this image of a Veritech trying to ride a bicycle.
No, I'll make it even better. A Veritech on a tricycle with tassels.
The legs all splayed out and moving wildly.
And a little bell. You know? Ching ching. So there will be certain limits. For instance, if you have, say, a light set of powered armor similar to a grasshopper, you're not going to be hauling along, what would be a good example? It's extremely unlikely. Oh, okay, there's a wonderful example. Yikes. Let's say you have a grasshopper powered armor. You guys familiar with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You are not going to haul a Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher. You might be able to haul... okay, you can haul it as a separate mount that you take off, put on a tripod. That thing generates, when firing automatic, 650 foot-pounds of torque, which means that you have to have it on. If you're firing it from the back of the unit, it will flip that powered armor all over the terrain. Oopsie, right. Small problem.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I saw an image. It was kind of like a chassis of like a fire truck, right? And they had a phalanx system on top of it.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it was a Photoshop image, but...
That's a Photoshop, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That or the equivalent of a technical... Have you guys ever messed around a fire truck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those things are built to bear, I'll tell you that much right now.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. They're humongous, they're solid, they weigh fucking a ton. Like, they'll get you through whatever barricade you want, and there's a reason that police convert them into riot trucks.
Right. A ladder truck, those ladders are heavy, and do not get me started on water.
Right.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
8 pounds.
Like when you're carrying around your own water supply for your roof-mounted water cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna sweep through some protesters.
Throwing out the fishing line again and reeling us back in. So when it comes to the vehicle system, like when it comes to actual the mechanics of the combat, you mentioned 3rd edition 40K, in which either
I'm not going to do something like that.
So,
although I would love to, I'm not going to. I'm going to make it compatible with interlock. Basically, Cyberpunk 2020 and Cyberpunk Red. That's my main goal, is to make something that can be used for both systems, that is much simpler. And well, I've learned a lot in the last 30 years, guys.
Yeah.
That's why I really want to rewrite it. Remember what I said about, I know artists who have tried to burn their art from the 80s?
Yeah.
Well, this is about the same thing. I want to replace what I did.
So you're looking for, if you hit, you penetrate armor, and then you do a certain amount of hit point damage to the vehicle.
Well, I'm looking for, you roll the hit. If you hit, then you roll your damage. You apply the armor, the stopping power to the damage, and then whatever gets through goes to the vehicle. And the vehicles will have, simply in the interest of simplicity, vehicles will have a pool of hit points that you would subtract this from, and at certain levels, at certain percentages, the vehicles start degrading. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For added bonus, and thank you, Cyberpunk, both systems. I have something that a lot of systems don't. Willpower. The
Right.
willpower stat.
So the
idea
vehicles would
being-
have a willpower stat?
No,
Oh.
the crews. Here's a funny little fact about combat, vehicle combat forever. Ground vehicles, the moment that they take a penetrating hit, the crew is out of there. They could be just, all of them as right as rain, healthy as horses, no problems. But the moment they take a penetrating hit, any crew worth its salt is gone.
Yeah.
The only times I've heard of this not happening is when they're insane, or, as a friend of mine who was in Vietnam said, there was an assault where the North Vietnamese army actually chained their crews into their tanks and then welded the tanks on the inside of the tanks.
Ooh.
Jeez.
Yeah. Talk about Suicide Squad, right? But
Yeah, you do the job right or you don't do the job at all.
right. So ground vehicles leave. My thought is it's all about the psychology of, hey, I can go outside and duck. It's hard to do that when you're in an air vehicle. There's no ground you can crawl into. And there's an old aphorism about boats. You can't walk home from a boat ride.
No.
So aerial vehicles and ships, the crews tend to stay until the last possible moment before hitting the silk or hitting the water.
Yeah.
So I want to put in some alternative rules that people can use if they wish or not. It's going to be alternative, not set in stone. For your vehicle is hit pretty bad, are you going to leave it? With little modifiers like, I can see some moments. No, it's my baby. I'm not leaving.
Right.
But you roll for, and I do like the fact that Cyberpunk Red has put in a critical hit system, which I'm thinking of enacting in vehicles, which would be simply pure unadulterated luck. The golden BB thing. Trying to think of a good one in tanks that makes that happen in history. And I'm not coming. Oh. This was a critical hit that was an aimed shot. All right. Real quick story. 1942. Russia. One of these.
You're talking about the dude who shot down the barrel?
Yeah, who shot the barrel of the KV-1 tank.
Yeah,
Because
okay, go ahead.
At a range of 20 feet, their rounds were bouncing off the turret and the side and everything else. 20 feet, guys. So
yeah,
the commander says, shoot the barrel. They put a dent through the barrel, and someone tried to fire the gun inside the KV-1, and it backfired, blew out the gun, and killed or wounded everyone in the tank.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
They were pretty, and I have photographs. You can find them online. You can see. Oh yeah, you can see the turret of the KV-1 looks like acne. like the planet Io. It looks like the moon Io. It is just pockmarked. And then you can just go up and see 4 separate hits on the gun mantlet and 2 on the gun, 2 or 3 on the gun. At 20 feet, it's hard to miss, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to put some critical hits for little goofy things. Okay, one last thing about this. I need your opinions. What do you think about the fusion/mecton rule that if you roll high enough compared to your opponent, you can score an automatic critical hit?
I don't necessarily know that the opponent has to be has to factor into that at all, but yeah, you roll high enough, it should be a critical hit.
Since Cyberpunk, both systems use an opposed roll. That's what I mean. If your opponent pretty much kludges it, and you roll like a god, And what I'm thinking is sometimes technology can make up for this. In Operation Desert Storm back in 1991 or 92, there were plenty of instances where Bradley infantry fighting vehicles took out T-60s and T-62s at range, at night, while in motion, because they were using their thermographic sights to aim precisely, and they were hitting the turret rings, which showed up as a higher heat level from a range of like a half a mile. They were sending depleted uranium rounds through the turret rings and taking out the tanks with one hit.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, the Iraqi tanks weren't dodging. They weren't moving. They were stationary. But still, firing hot uranium sideways at night and critting every one of them, that's like getting nothing but cockpit head hits on Battletech.
Right. I mean, so again, you're playing into the system you are working with, right? So Red specifically has crit rules as opposed
making it an option,
right,
for 2020 as well.
So from a 2020, right, you have the you roll a 10, you automatically get to re-roll another 10. Right. So that you could play into some type of rule in which you get a 10. Sure, you can roll again, but then that second 10 is you're really rolling on a crit table of 1 to 10 to see what you do.
Cyberpunk has critical hit tables, and they have since 2013. And they've had critical hit tables for vehicles since, again, 2013 and Black Hands.
Right. One of the things, this is one of the fusion rules that has showed up in Sengoku, the Chanbara samurai game.
Yeah.
And that is, if you beat your opponent's roll by 7, you don't roll your damage, you do full damage. That's your critical hit. I like the, if you beat your opponent's roll by 7, you get a critical hit. I would like for it to not be full damage, because that's pretty heinous.
Well,
particularly for vehicles.
I think for vehicles it would be a chart, right? You lose your power source, you lose your movement, you lose a weapon, you lose optics or something along those natures.
You lose something. And Lord help you, by the way, guys, this is one of the, just as a mechanical thing, one of the problems with the scope dogs and the other armored troopers is that they use hydraulic systems. Hydraulic systems produce tremendous amounts of power for small amounts of energy, but boy, are they vulnerable. You're talking an Oakland circulatory system?
Yeah, they're also very slow.
You haven't seen the hydraulics I have. They're not slow. Oh, no. They're very fast. But electrical systems, electric actuators, are less vulnerable. They are heavier than hydraulics. They don't give you the same amount of power input to power output ratio, and they are much more responsive. You're right, there is a lag with hydraulics. So that's I suspect that all the powered armors and I'm gonna look for a new name for the big powered armors, the ones that you drive instead of riding, like armored troopers. Can't call them armored troopers, that's copyrighted.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
I may use the old Artal Saurian name, Road Strikers.
There you go.
It's already legit and it's already connected to Cyberpunk.
Yep.
2013, but potato. Yeah. Oh well. Oh God. I do apologize. We have yacked away your podcast.
Yeah, that was the point.
This is the point of the podcast.
Is to sit, talk about a topic, and ramble, and talk about Cyberpunk in general. So.
Right. Oh. If you if you see any responses with ideas, alert me.
I mean, I already told you. I'm happy to bounce ideas back and forth with you at any time.
Oh yeah, and once I start getting into it, I will be sending you updates and partial work, work in progress, so that you can look over it and say, Greg, you ignorant, misguided fool, this sucks.
Jane, you
Ignorant slut.
You guys get it. Oh man, that's old.
Yeah, that's year one. Saturday Night Live there.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't year one because Chevy Chase did the news, so it was after Chevy Chase.
Yep.
That wasn't the news though. That was Point Counterpoint.
That's point.
That wasn't Weekend.
I thought it was
And I think that's
the
John
news.
Aykroyd.
Yeah,
Dan Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd
Dan
and
Aykroyd
Jane
and Jane
Curtin.
Jane Curtin. Jane, you ignorant, misguided slut. Oh my gosh.
Rosanna
Specifically
Dana.
talking about Johnny Carson's divorce. I guess what you're saying is when you're on your back, the meter's running.
Man, I didn't know how harsh that was.
Yeah, early Saturday Night Live was pretty
Like,
cutting
my parents
edge.
wouldn't let me watch it when it first came on. They're like, "No, you can't watch this." I'm like, "But it's on TV."
Holy cow! That statement about the meter running. I think we have a trial in New York going on about that kind of thing right now. Not mentioning politics. I'm steering clear.
Well, we're at time. Thanks again for joining us, Craig. I hope we gave you some guidance, some help, some ideas to take your rules. We are here, and those who are listening, by all means, you can catch us on Cyber Nation Uncensored's Discord. We have a channel there. If you want to put your 2 cents there, by all means, give us some feedback. So we're going to wrap up the show. Like I said, Cyber Nation Uncensored, go check their Discord out, check their YouTube channel out, check even the live plays that the teams are doing. There's several out there, specifically around Cyberpunk. There are also some other games that are doing live play. Dune, Fallout, the bunch. Nice indie games. It's not all D&D or mainstream games. So definitely check them out. Thank you, Rob Mulligan, for hosting us yet again. We are in our 60s now with episodes, so can't believe we've lasted this long and been somewhat consistent. You can check me, Mr. Cybersmily, over at cybersmily.net, in which I have a bunch of utilities. I am starting to work on some enhancements to my character generator for 2020, as well as the combat tracker. Some people have voiced that they would like to see additions to it, so I am looking into implementing that, just trying to find the time.
I gotta look into that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I have a Max Metal creator, so you can actually, all that math and all that fun stuff is automatic. Anyways, I also have my own Discord server. There are people here. Craig Sheely is part of the server, as well as a lot of the old-time authors. I know Benjamin chimes in once in a while, more often than not, so appreciate that love. I'm also on a bunch of other Discord servers, so if you at Cybersmily, good chance I will pick it up and read it. I've surprised people in that they mention my site and I reply and they're like, "Oh, you're here?" I'm like, "Yes." I do read the Cyberpunk 2020 and the Cyberpunk Reddit. Other than that, I'm not too much else into the other avenues of social media reasons, but that's it from me.
I am the other host, Wisdom000. My name is Derek Rainier. I run Datafortress2020, the largest, most comprehensive Cyberpunk 2020 site online. Check us out for rules, source books, gear, really anything related to Cyberpunk, as well as an exhaustive archive of most of the former sites that are no longer with us, or at least the relevant articles and pieces from those sites. I too am on Reddit in the same groups. I am on his Discord. I'm also on Facebook, where I moderate the Datafortress2020 and Cyberpunk 2020 groups. Like Will said, please reach out to us. We love to hear your comments, criticisms, suggestions, complaints, whatever you got to tell us. We just like to hear from you.
Yep.
Anything we can do to make the show better. Thanks again, Rob. Thank you, Craig, for joining us tonight.
Here.
Will, when's our next show?
The 15th.
All right.
Before Furiosa.
Yeah. All right, then we will see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Yep. Ta-ta.
Cyber Nation Uncensored.